Thank you very much. Well, just to get started, everyone, I thought this was a 90-minute webinar, and it turns out it's only 60 minutes. So I'm going to, in the middle of this, I am probably going to skip a whole bunch of slides and just leave them for you to read them, because it sort of does read like a book. So now you have a sort of an appeals and denials management book. So when you start seeing me flipping through slides very quickly, you'll know that's why. So I'm sorry about that, but I prepared a little incorrectly because I thought this was longer than it is. And I always have a disclaimer that neither myself or the presentation company that I'm working for are responsible if somehow you get in trouble because you misunderstood what I said and did something wrong, because our facts are checked and rechecked and we're really sure they're right. So hopefully you stay on target, you know what I'm saying, and you follow it along. And if this was an in-person conference that I was speaking at, I usually have people sort of laughing when we discuss that. I want to sort of quote a slide that Frank Cohen said back in March of 2010 after he did an appeals and denials study. And in that appeals and denial study, he said, for the results of the study were quite amazing. For example, more than 50% of practices reported that they all appealed denied claims, and of those 50% state that the appeals resulted in a reversal of their denial claims. And so on average, 67% of all denials were reversed. This is quite incredible and begs the question about the appropriateness of the denials in the first place. Overall, I estimate that this game of denial appeal costs our healthcare system around $17 billion a year in wasted time, effort, and rework. And so we're all sort of part of that little game that we play cat and mouse with the payers, that they deny something that's truly valid, and then we appeal it and eventually get it paid. And what's even more amazing is, I think, of those 33% who did not get paid on their denial and it wasn't reversed, that may be because they didn't necessarily put together a good appeal. And that $17 billion could even be more money, because if they had put together a better appeal, maybe they would have gotten paid. So that is quite amazing of how much money is wasted in the healthcare system just on the cost of appeals and the cost of chasing your proper payment. And that is quite frustrating. So this denials of services, which should have been paid in the first place, but we have to, we have to stay on top of those denials. Money's being left on the table, and it's a huge revenue leak and causing money that's not being paid and lost to the practice. And it's up to us to follow up on that money and get paid. So you're receiving denials coming into your practice that are not valid, or you're being underpaid for things on your remittance advices that are not reasonable or valid, and it's up to us to follow up on those things and appeal good appeals that get paid. So it's up to us to first make sure that our claims are correctly coded, they're clean when they go out to the payers for processing. And secondly, once they get processed, and if they're incorrectly processed, we have to hold the payers accountable to pay for what those correctly coded and clean claims, and make sure that the payers are bound by their contracts, both their contracts to the patients and their contracts to you if you're contracted with those payers to get paid for those claims. So now let's talk about the difference between an appealed claim and a corrected claim, because there is a difference. Let's look at the corrected claim. I actually have a typo in my slide. ICD-10, it should say, not ICD-9. A corrected claim is if you made a mistake, like you linked the wrong ICD-10 to the CPT, because remember the ICD-10 is going to determine the medical necessity, or you are missing a modifier or something like that. You're correcting the claim, which will cause it to be a payable claim, and that's why it wasn't paid. Whereas an appeal claim is everything was right and perfect about that claim, but the payer still didn't pay it. So that's the difference between an appealed claim and a corrected claim. A corrected claim is something you need to fix in the claim, and you think once you fix it, it should get paid. And an appealed claim is everything was right, it was a clean claim when it was submitted, and it still didn't get paid, and it is reimbursable as it was billed, and you're appealing it. And that's the difference between an appealed claim or corrected claim. So when you send in your appeal, you should actually say, I am submitting this appeal, or I am sending in this corrected claim. When you're deciding if you're